Hi, I am Ying. I'm a manufacturing engineer at Rolls-Royce.
And how long have you been working there?
I've been working at Rolls-Royce for 5 years.
Okay, so onto your educational background, what did that look like for you? What subjects did you pick and how did you go about picking them?
Sure, I think when I was in secondary school, for the GCSE equivalent, I picked science over business or arts courses because I think science is interesting, and from primary school I've always been interested in that, and I think there's more to explore and more things you can do with science. That's why I went for the science subjects in GCSE. When it comes to A levels, I was very sure that I don't want to be a doctor, so I dropped biology and took up IT instead. So I did physics, maths, general paper, which is English, chemistry, 4 subjects for my A levels. And I think the reason behind that, I think, apart from knowing, biology is not my thing, I don't be a doctor, I think the physics, chemistry, math side is very interesting, and I think I was setting my sights on something to do with design, with something intelligent, so it became engineering.
Okay, so you chose to go to university. Is there any particular reason you chose to do that as opposed to any other route?
Yeah, I chose to go to uni to do my degree because I think I want to enjoy a bit of a campus life, student life, and studying my subjects while being active in extracurricular activities. And that was one of my aims for my early 20s. That's why I went for university. And in terms of what subject did I choose, I think I chose mechanical design engineering because going back to why I chose my A levels, I like the arty, creative side of things. Want to be creative, I want to design things, but I also want the intelligent bits in it. I want to know what are the materials I'm designing, what properties do they have, and how durable they are. So mechanical design engineering become the perfect choice for me.
Mm-hmm. And did your degree live up to those expectations?
I think yes, definitely. I think it gave me the theoretical stuffs behind to the knowledge to let me go and do other things. For example, I was in Formula Student when I was in university, so that was really cool. I get to use CAD models to design a super futuristic car that we never get to make because it was way too hard. But I think the satisfaction that you get from actually design something that looks amazing, it's one of the really satisfying thing for me.
So hearing that you took part in Formula Student, did that change your perception of engineering at all?
I think definitely. I think in the first year or two, I think engineering is still it's a very abstract concept because you learn about individual subjects, you learn mathematics, you learn materials, you learn solid state mechanics. But doing Formula Student actually puts everything together. It makes me, very, very important. It makes me apply my knowledge in classrooms and exams, because when you study that in the classroom, you don't know how you're going to apply this. But when you actually start building a car, designing a car, you start thinking about the stress, where are the stress points, and how does it impact the car and things like that. And I think that's really putting the knowledge into practical use for me.
So did you have any particular experiences that helped you decide that engineering is definitely for you?
Yeah, sure. I think it's one of those moments when I see a jet engine, a rocket in NASA, in a museum or something like that, and I realize, oh my God, this is so cool, and actually I'm part of it, standing behind something like that, and it actually excites me, and it's so empowering that you are part of that and actually making that change. That was the moment when I realized I'm happy to be an engineer.
Amazing. Okay, and so for those who are choosing the subjects now, do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, I think for me there's so many possible career choices out there that I didn't know when I was choosing my subjects. Because when you are choosing the subjects, it seems to be there's only 3 choices or 5 choices out there. But when I actually come out to the real world, you see thousands, if not millions of them. And I didn't know all of them back then. So I think the advice is actually do your research, talk to people, go to career fairs, and just explore as much as you can. Stay curious with an open mind, because sometimes it's not just black and white, doctor, lawyers, accountants. Sometimes, there's so much more possibilities for that. For example, in engineering alone, I think people have got a very stereotypical image of what an engineer does. But for me, an engineer, the engineers that I know, they are stress engineers, materials engineers, performance engineers, lab engineers, systems engineers. Such a big wide range, and where they can work, ranges from racetracks to labs to factory to a modern office environment. So I would say go out there and do your research and explore before making a decision.
And for those who are writing personal statements to go to university or things like that, do you have any advice to show passion for engineering?
So for me, it's volunteering. So for myself, I volunteer for STEM a lot because I'm passionate about it. And it goes the same for somebody who wants to go to university and wants to write a personal statement. There's nothing stopping you from spending a Sunday out, volunteering for STEM in a primary school, actually teaching physics or maths in a simple way, joining the local community, things like that you can actually put into your CV or personal statement when you apply for university.
So it's often the case for a lot of people that they don't come across subjects like engineering until quite late. So what was that like for you? How did you come across engineering?
It was similar. I didn't find out about engineering until I was doing my A-levels and looking for a degree to study. And even if I picked engineering, it was more because of the design and engineering than engineering itself. So yes, you're right, a lot of people doesn't know about engineering, but that's because it's a relatively new subject. It's not like doctors or lawyers that's been around for ages, and engineering as an industry has moved massively in a very, very quick pace. It changes all the time throughout the years. That's why the public doesn't really get to have a very firm image of what engineering is.
Okay, and so now moving on to the present, what does a day in your life look like?
My day as a manufacturing engineer, I would say it starts at about 8 a.m. and then it finishes at about 4 p.m. So when I come in at 8 in the morning, I'll probably attend some meetings in the morning to understand what has happened in the past 24 hours in the factory. And then I'll probably do some analysis, some problem solving on my computer before popping in and out of the factory. So for example, let me give you an example. Things like we've got a spike in say defects over the last 24 hours for a certain machine. So what I would do is to look at my computers, draw out some data, do some trend analysis, and basically draw some graphs and go and actually have a look for myself. Hopefully by the afternoon I would have had an initial idea or a hypothesis of what it is, and in the afternoon I'll probably be talking to people, talking to different experts to try and get a solution for that. So I would say on average a day looks like that, and towards the end of the day there might be some more meetings, some communications before sending out say a report or a presentation pack before going on.
Okay. And what would be your favourite project that you've ever worked on?
It's got to be the hybrid electric.
Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, sure. One of my favourite projects that I have worked on is the hybrid electric propulsion aircraft project. So that was about 3 years ago when I was tasked with researching hybrid electric technologies for aircraft. So that means instead of running on aircraft fuel, potential future planes will be running on electric motors. That was a very interesting project because it was a lot of what is our current technology capability, what could the future technology trends bring us to, and when we can actually realize hybrid electric aircraft flying in the air. And the biggest thing for me is something that I'm working on now today. Maybe in 10, 20 years time, I might actually see it flying in the air.
All right, and so is there anything about your career currently that surprised you when you first came into it?
I think the biggest thing that surprised me is how diverse and interesting and exciting engineering actually is. For me, I went into it. I know Rolls-Royce is a great place to work, but I didn't know how diverse it actually is. For example, I'm going to give some examples here. Everyone keeps telling me that engineering is about problem solving. And I didn't know that, when I go to career fairs and I ask other engineers, so what do you do? They say, every day is different. It's all about problem solving. And I think now I start to understand what it means, because you do get a different problem every day. And it's like a puzzle. You don't know the answer, but it is your day job to go and find the answer. That's what surprised me, actually, like how interesting it is every day.
So you mentioned that you came into Rolls-Royce on a graduate scheme. So how did you find it? Have you got any advice for those who might be looking for graduate schemes now?
Yeah, I really, really like my graduate scheme. So in Rolls-Royce, I did an 18 months placement over 4 different rotations. So it's 4 different places, 4 different projects in different teams. And that gave me a really good overall view of the company. So I know what roles I want to go into at the end of the graduate scheme. And apart from that, one of the really other good things is great training and development opportunities, because as a graduate, you get mentors, you get professional mentors who help you with professional registration and accreditation compared to a direct entry. So I'll highly recommend anybody out there to go for a graduate scheme first. But if you don't get into one, you can always go to a direct entry. It's not the end of the world.
Okay. And how would you recommend looking for one? Any tips or advice you would give for people currently looking?
My biggest tip for somebody who is looking for graduate schemes is apply early as possible. Everyone will tell you that, but it is one of the most important things, because a lot of graduate schemes nowadays, it's first come, first serve, and they close the scheme after all the positions are filled. So don't wait until you start uni in September. Start researching in the summer, create a list of your priority companies, what they're looking for, and start the prep early on in the summer. Don't wait until September.
So, do you think there are any misconceptions other people have about what you do?
Definitely. I think a lot of people tend to think of engineers as somebody in a hard hat, high vis, and a spanner working in a dirty factory. And what I wanted to say is, it's not like that in real life, because we are moving towards Industrial 4.0, which means we are using artificial intelligence or machine learning, very high-tech equipment to do engineering. And I'd like to project that image towards the general public, that we are professionals using data to problem solve, rather than sort of working manual jobs in a factory.
So one really common misconception I've found is that engineers are quite solitary, that you do a lot individually. So do you have any comments on that?
From my experience, engineering is very cross-functional and very teamwork focused. So nothing is achieved alone. Definitely, from my experience, all of my projects would involve more than 10 people from 10 different functions. And I would say it's a very collaborative environment to work in. Definitely not in solitude, I would say.
And have you had any projects that are cross-disciplinary? So lots of people from different areas of STEM or even outside working together to do something?
Yeah, I think if I use the hybrid electric aircraft project, for example, I have talked to a lot of different specialists, from battery technology to marine to somebody working on electrical networks in Singapore to Norway. It's global, it's very cross-functional, it's definitely outside of my own personal knowledge field, because that's what engineering is about. It brings everything together to deliver a great project or a great product.
Okay, so did you have any childhood aspirations or role models?
For me, it's Rey from Star Wars, because I grew up watching a lot of films where the girls were waiting to be saved by a prince. And I didn't particularly like that. And when I saw Rey on the screen actually, fighting for herself, being really brave, actually flying the Millennium Falcon, I thought that was so cool. Imagine all the girls growing up nowadays watching that. What a great role model she is, and she's been my idol ever since.
And so did you have any childhood aspirations, anything you wanted to be other than an engineer?
Childhood aspiration. I wanted to be an astronaut or a pilot. I really like things that fly or go into space and things like that. But I started wearing glasses since I was 7 because I read too many books and watched too much TV. So that kind of, it kind of go away from me. But it's always been there. I think when I fly or when I see a rocket, I think that's always sparks that little dream in me.
Amazing. Okay, and so what's it like for you to be a woman in engineering? Have you faced any disadvantages as a result?
I wouldn't say disadvantage, but there are challenges for being a woman in engineering, especially when women only make up 12% of engineers. And I think the main challenge for me is when people make assumptions about you as a female engineer, young female engineer. People do make assumptions, and I have to work to break those assumptions and gain the credibility for myself. However, I think it's slowly improving, but I think we need more people to be aware. First, be aware of it, and second, to take up the position as an engineer to actually break all these challenges and overcome it.
So, do you have any advice you would give to your younger self?
I think when I was about 19 or 20 years old, I didn't really talk to a lot of people about engineering, and on hindsight, I could have done more of that because mainly I was just going along with the flow, and I was learning, I was picking up stuff in lectures and things like that. But had I gone out, travel a little bit, and then talk to different people, it could have been a lot more interesting for me while I was doing my degree.
Awesome. Okay, and finally, for those who are wanting to get into engineering but have no idea where to start, what would you suggest?
Well, let's start from the young age. So if you're in GCSE, I would say visit a lot of science museums, because that really inspired me to become an engineer. And I remember the one in London, especially, Science Museum. There was a hall full of aeroplanes and engines, and you really get an appreciation of how things work in a very simple way. So even if you're GCSE or primary school, whatever, or even an adult, as I was when I visited, but it's very inspiring, and I encourage you to visit more of these. For A-level students, I would say talk to people, talk to different universities, visit engineering departments, talk to lecturers, talk to engineering students to understand what is day like, what do you study, and potentially think about the potential career routes you would like to go into. There's electronic engineering, there's mechanical engineering, systems engineering. Everything is different and everything's interesting. It doesn't necessarily limit the career moves, but you can definitely explore that. And once you're in your degree, I would say networking. I think that's very important, and be proactive. So it's not just knowing somebody, hey, hi, bye, and then you go away. But if you can think of something interesting that you can follow up with the person later on, and I think that'll be very beneficial for somebody who wants to join engineering.
Awesome, thank you very much.